It's easier to say, oh, we're gonna show everybody that we know this league is good with or without Caitlin Clark. We're gonna prove it. But once you talk to your owner buddies and they say, look how much we made. I mean, Indiana Fever came to town. Look how much we're making, right? Once Renee Montgomery and Sheila Johnson talk to the owner of the Las Vegas Aces, talk to the owner of the Chicago Sky, and they say, hey, what was that gate looking like? Oh, damn. That's a lot of money. Indiana had 9 road games moved to larger arenas last year, but just 4 so far for 2026. WNBA teams are moving more games to different arenas this upcoming season, but Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever have significantly fewer of those games. The WNBA's regular season schedule announced Wednesday, including 19 games moved to different arenas, up from
9 down to 4 is the kind of shift that demands closer attention. Last season, Indiana's road schedule turned into the league's traveling showcase, with multiple games moved into NBA-sized arenas because standard venues could not meet the demand connected to Caitlin Clark. This year, that pipeline shrinks to just 4 Fever road games in larger buildings, even as the league overall increases the number of arena moves from 15 to 19. If the league is speaking louder than ever about growth and demand, the math begins to feel selective. The public-facing explanation usually points to caution. Clark's groin injury last season becomes the convenient reference point, a way to frame smaller venue commitments as careful and responsible planning.
Mystics, Connecticut Sun, and Atlanta Dream each moved 1 game against Indiana last year, but none for the upcoming season. The New York Liberty, Portland Fire, Mercury, Valkyries, and Minnesota Lynx are already in NBA arenas, removing any need to move games for bigger crowds. Is part of this due to injuries? Well, they would like you to believe that, I think. They would like you to believe, oh, well, she got injured last year. We don't want to move. We don't want to commit to a bigger arena. God forbid she gets...
But the real-world test already music happened. When her availability changed, the crowds did not disappear. Those games still drew fans, still sold tickets, and still proved the Fever were the biggest road music draw in the league. Indiana's road attendance was the clear outlier, averaging around 15,184 per game, nearly 4,000 more than any other team. And Clark only played in 3 of the moved games before the injury. So the question is not whether teams can sell tickets without her on the floor, because they already did. The question is why the one team that consistently produced the strongest road music, demand, is the one receiving fewer chances to expand that demand. Now consider who influences the choices behind the scenes. These venue decisions do not appear at random. They come from ownership groups, front offices, and league music, stakeholders who each carry their own views of what the WNBA should represent.
Have names like Renee Montgomery, part owner of the Atlanta Dream. Names like Sheila Johnson, part owner of the Washington Mystics. Sheila Johnson, the same person who threw a fit that Caitlin Clark was named Time Magazine's Woman Athlete of the Year. And she said, why give it to Caitlin Clark? Let's give it to the whole entire league. If you ask me, this is a subtle play from folks like Sheila Johnson and Renee Montgomery. Because at the end of the season, they decreased the amount of Fever games that have been moved to bigger arenas. Yet in totality, they increased the league from 15 games to 19 games.
And whose music story gets prioritized? Start with Atlanta and Washington. Renee Montgomery is part of the Atlanta Dream ownership group. Sheila Johnson is part owner of the Washington Mystics. Johnson is also the same executive who publicly pushed back when Time magazine highlighted Caitlin Clark, arguing that recognition should be spread more evenly across the league. Last season, Atlanta moved a single Indiana game into State Farm Music Arena. This year, they moved none. Washington followed the same pattern. Music 1 moved game last season, none this year. Connecticut offers another data point that makes the trend harder to dismiss. The Sun took Music, a Clark game, to TD Garden, the one closely tied in public memory to the injury. This season, there is nothing comparable scheduled. If the league truly believed the Fever were the safest bet for music demand, you would expect at least one marquee move to remain on the calendar, not a music, quiet step backward.
4 times this season. You see how massive the season was? You see how much of a success it was this year? And we only had Caitlin Clark. See, we don't really need her. I told you guys we were going to do this without her. Interesting. The decrease in moved fever games comes after Caitlin Clark played in just 13 games last season. Clark appeared in just 3 of the 9 moved road games, including July 15th against the Connecticut Sun at TD Garden. Clark injured her groin in the fourth quarter of that game and missed the remainder of the season. The Fever remained the league's biggest attendance draw last year, averaging 15,884 fans.
What makes this even more revealing is that the decline is not limited to one music franchise. Chicago and Dallas each had 2 games moved to larger venues last season. This year, each has 1. At the same time, the league is clearly not stepping away from arena shifts altogether. Toronto's expansion team has 5 games moved across different venues, including dates in Montreal and Vancouver. That is the league clearly signaling its willingness to rearrange buildings when it wants to maximize attention, crowd size, and market momentum. Taken together, the pattern is difficult to ignore. The total number of moved games rises from 15 to 19, yet Fever-related moves fall sharply from music, 9 to 4. If the explanation were simply logistics or a general pullback from larger arenas, the numbers would level out across the league. Instead, the strategy expands overall while narrowing where it is applied. And Indiana stands as the outlier moving in the opposite direction. Focus on the 4 large venue dates they actually music retained. July 5th against Las Vegas, August 8th against Chicago, August 18th against Toronto, and August 20th against Dallas. Music, every one of them sits well beyond the opening stretch, when cameras are loudest and early season energy is at its peak. Last year, the league leaned into that early demand and music, stacked arena upgrades near the front of the schedule, when the spotlight on Caitlin Clark was at its brightest music point. This year, the approach reads differently. It appears to be an effort music to shape the early season narrative inside smaller venues first, then introduce larger arenas later. Once the initial music surge fades and attention must be deliberately reignited.